So you were the guy. You took that role on. You followed your heart. And at this point, it seems like career navigation has been your biggest strength, and also leading with heart and logic, not ego. Season 1 does okay.
Yeah, fine.
Gets the attention of America.
A lot of people remember it as big. It was kind of big, but ABC was a dumpster fire at the time. A lot of shows were aging and going off the air as we came on, and reality TV was not a thing. Survivor had just started, and then us. So everyone was kind of still reluctant to really believe in it. And more importantly, industry-wide, it was very looked down upon. We were pond scum in the industry.
Unscripted TV
yeah.
is still fighting in 2023 to not be pond scum. I think it's kind of turned the corner. So in 2002, it's a whole different ball, especially
I'll never forget,
in Hollywood.
I went to this thing called the Upfronts, and it's where the network presents their upcoming schedule to all the advertisers. And we go, and we're in Radio City Music Hall, and Jimmy Kimmel had just started. So Jimmy Kimmel's there, and all the actors are there for the new shows. And I'll never forget, Lloyd Braun was his name. He was the president of ABC. And he basically was like looking around the room. He's like, look, we're not proud of this, but we got The Bachelor. That's coming on this fall. We were just like, I'm like, oh, okay. I come on stage and wave. It was just like,
thanks, guys.
It couldn't have been a bigger turd in the punch bowl. It was so funny because that's how actors looked at us. That's how, I'll never forget, they didn't know what to do with me. We would go to ABC events, and at the time they had this thing called Monday Night Football on ABC, and it was Al Michaels and John Madden or whatever. And I would go, and I remember Christy Yamaguchi, the great figure skater, was there from ABC Sports, and so they're like, I don't know, man, go with the sports people. They didn't know what to do. They're just like, go stand over there with Al Michaels. And so I got to know Al Michaels, which was awesome because I was a sports guy. But it was funny. I just remember nobody knew what to do with this reality TV thing.
But then that reality TV thing becomes a massive game changer with season 2, right?
Which pissed them off even more.
But it pissed the industry off.
Yes.
But you're getting 30 million plus views. That's one third of the Super Bowl.
Alex Michelle was season 1. Season 2 was this banker, Aaron Berge from Missouri, which it's funny, people really forget about that season. People talk about Trista on, Bob Guinea, Andrew Firestone. It's probably because, he went back, Aaron went on and lived his life. And still, I think, owns banks and restaurants in Missouri. But it's funny that people don't talk about that season because that season was
the game changer.
That was the tipping point.
That catapulted Trista's season to take over the entire.
100%.
I mean, what's interesting now is we see ratings: Golden Bachelor 5 to 6 million, Bachelor in Paradise 2 million.
Right.
We're talking 30 million, like touching 40 million in some episodes.
We would have literally jumped off a bridge if we saw the ratings that they get today back then. First of all, you wouldn't have been on the air. Midway through the show, they literally would have pulled the plug out of the wall and it would have been over.
Fascinating.
But we had, at the end of season 2 with Aaron Berge, we had 33 million viewers.
Okay. So
we outdrew the World Series. We outdrew the Oscars. It was number 1 show on TV by far. And then we had this amazing woman, Trista Wren, who was on season 1. And that was how that whole thing started of let's bring a woman off the last show and make her the Bachelorette. And so we brought Trista on, and she was our first Bachelorette. And she got that beautiful residual bounce from Aaron Berge's season. And now this thing was a tsunami of press, viewers. I knew my life had changed again massively, but I wasn't sure how. Like, I couldn't put it in perspective because I've used this analogy before, but it was like rookie year, you go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's cool because you've watched the Super Bowl your whole life, but
sure,
you don't know what it takes to get there.
Yeah.
And so this is my first network gig, and all of a sudden I'm the number 1 show on all of television. Unprecedented numbers. Crazy.
So you have to, at this point, go knocking on their door and say, okay, the show's taken off. My 12-5's got to change. I got to leave the horse racing network, right?
Then that is when Trista's season is when I finally, because things started, there was some animosity being built up because I was paying so much attention and, with my other show and The Bachelor and Bachelorette. And now, I was becoming a news story and stuff. And so it started getting in the way, and I couldn't give them my attention anymore. And so I left.
Okay.
And it really, what did it was they asked me to come in and work. I hadn't had a holiday off in a while. And I finally had some really good friends coming in for Thanksgiving. And I said, guys, I'm going to take Thanksgiving off.
Okay.
They said, no, you're not. And I think it was a power play, to like keep me under their thumb. And I said, all right, I quit. and I left the horse. I was like, I
Done.
just grabbed my shit. I'm like, I was looking for an excuse to leave anyway. And I said, look, we all know this is over, but I left on good terms. I still keep in touch with a lot of those guys. And I have mad respect and love for that network. And I learned so much starting a network, creating something from scratch, which we did with that network. I learned so much about, just throwing stuff against the wall, being brave, being, unafraid to fail.
Yeah.
But The Bachelor, after Trista, now we're cooking and now we're crushing it, but I'm not.
How many seasons does it take for you to get that new package?
So here's what's funny. Wasn't funny at the time. It is now. I have this.
Wasn't funny at the time.
At the time, it really pissed me off, and I was like, I was livid. But I have this deal for 5 seasons of The Bachelor.
Okay.
So five seasons, and we created The Bachelorette, and so it counts. So, we do the first one, Alex Michelle, then Aaron Berge, then Trista, and then, we do like Bob Guinea and Andrew Firestone or whoever came next. So I'm like, okay, that's, we're going into that 5th season. I called my agent. I said, guys, this is great. Not only, we're still number 1 in the world, we're killing it, and we're going to renegotiate. This is my 5th and final season. And they're like, yeah, where everyone's excited. This is going to be big. And I get a call from my agent. I said, your deal is for 5 years, not 5 seasons.
Oh,
and I don't know what kind of language you use on your show, but let's just say there were some expletives flying, and I'm not prone to cussing, but I lost my shit. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So I'm doing 3 of these a year for 5 years, and I'm in year 1. Or year 2, I'm like, I have to do 15 seasons of a TV show. The odds of any show making it 15 seasons is impossible.
Slim to vacation, Slim's on vacation.
Yeah,
there's
no
no
way.
chance.
No way. And granted, yes, hindsight, this show did go for much longer, and it's still going. But at the time, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I fired my agent, which was tough because they had gotten me from Oklahoma City to LA, and they had done some wonderful things. Some things happened within the organization that wasn't the certain agent's fault. I still loved her. She was fantastic, but she had kind of stepped away, maternity leave. So I was left in some kind of unfamiliar hands that weren't as good as her. And I caught him in a lie on something, and I said, that's it. That's, again, all I needed was that one reason. And I fired my agent, and I went to Endeavor. And I met these great people. They're still there. Sean Perry, Lance Klein, Evo Fisher. They were there, and they quickly took my contract, laughed at it, burned it, and said, we'll call you back this afternoon. And they called me back, and they said, okay, here's the new terms. And I'm like, oh, so this is how it works.
And is that when life changed for Chris Harrison?
That's when life really changed. That's when I didn't care about anything else about, Home and Garden Show and all. And by this time, thankfully, Home and Garden Show had kind of been waning, actually. And so we stopped doing that. And so I quit then the Bachelorette became my full-time job.
Got it.
But I'll be honest, I was always still scared and reluctant to quit everything because I wasn't making so much money that I could quit. People thought as of Trista's season, this is 3 seasons in, I was making
$1 million.
Millions and millions. I wasn't making millions of dollars. I'll never forget. I was driving this gold Nissan Altima, used Altima, and I would drive on the set, and for the executive producers and myself, we would pull actually we weren't at the mansion. We were at this old place in Malibu. I would pull into the driveway, and a PA or an intern, whatever, would take your car and go valet park it. So there's a few of us that got to do that, and I was one of them. And I remember the creator of the show was standing on the porch one day when I drove in, and he's like, the host of my show can't drive a used Nissan Altima. I said, well, let me tell you something, dude. With what you're paying me, this is what I can afford. So unless you buy me a new car or... and by the way, he had, his agency or the network that got him they bought him a brand new Porsche. They bought him like a big screen TV for a big thank you gift. And I'm like, all right, where, this trickle down, right? Trickle down theory,
right?
Reaganomics. No, that's not how that worked.
Interesting.
Their job, and look, any business and our business is the same. Their job is to give you as little as possible and make you do as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Every industry in the world, that's the same thing. They want to pay you as little as possible so they make more, but they want to take every ounce of sweat equity you have.
Well, let me ask you this then, because I think that makes a lot of sense. But just in Austin, for Sergio's event, I interviewed Sergio. blown away to learn that when he won the Masters, the check was only $1.2 million.
Yeah.
Yes, $1.2 million is a lot. When you think about perspective, the value of what the Masters brings and everything else, 1.2 is nothing. He said the true value comes in brand endorsements and opportunities after. I think about people from the show, people I know, a lot of them are making well into the seven figures from great endorsements, the businesses they built, the podcasts they have, etc. Were you able to monetize outside the show with like brand collaborations, brand endorsements, things like that?
That was the tough part. And I was there was a little bit of jealousy with you guys because y'all had more of an opportunity to go monetize it. I had to kind of, be careful about where my bread was buttered, which was the show. You guys leave and you're done or whatever, and you can break your contract, whatever. They're not really going to come sue you or whatever. They'll threaten it or whatever. But for me, they could fire me. It was my job. And so, yes, they allowed me to do some stuff, but I had to be very careful about the things I chose to do.
Understood.
And I also worked for someone who was pretty controlling. And again, I'm not saying that's good or bad. That's his perspective. He's the boss.
Yeah.
You can be controlling if you want. If you're the boss, it's your prerogative.
Sure.
He was very controlling and didn't love it when I slept around. It was mayhem when I went and did Millionaire. And I thought I had his blessing even. Even when I thought I had his blessing, it would still be brutal when I got back home. It's like someone who says, oh, it's okay if you go out with the boys, and then you get home and there's hell to pay.
Yeah.
That's how it was. Anytime, people would make snide comments about, oh, I saw you doing this, and oh, you're selling wedding rings now, and oh, you're doing, it was a battle. And, I'm dealing with ABC, I'm dealing with Warner / Telepictures, I'm dealing with, executive producers. So there was a line that I had to be careful I didn't cross. I had to play this game. And I also had to play a very interesting balancing act because the creator of the show was not liked by the network. So, the creator of the show creates the show and is part of the production company, but the network, ABC, despised him. So I'm getting invited to the upfronts. I'm the face and the voice of the show because they don't like him and they can't put him face forward because there's a lot of issues.
Of course.
So now there's a lot of animosity building because of this. So I'm trying to please the network, but I'm also trying to be loyal. I'm a very loyal person.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to work my ass off and make this a success. And I'm trying to do what's right by everybody, but it's impossible to do right by everybody because they don't like each other.
Interesting. When you're negotiating with The Bachelor, you're negotiating through the production company, but when Who Wants to Be a Millionaire comes to you, are you then negotiating through the Bachelor production company?
With The
or someone
Bachelor, I'm
else?
negotiating with the production company, but also the network has to sign off on me.
Got it.
So everybody has a say, but technically, and you can be paid by both. I won't get into the weeds of how all that works, but typically you're being paid by the television show and the production company.
Okay.
But ABC and all the way up to Bob Iger can say no or yes. And so it's this weird balancing act. And so I was trying, I thought, and I had to learn these lessons. I didn't have anybody to teach me this because I'm by myself. There's no cast of The Bachelor. It's me. No one else is getting paid at this point.
Of course.
And so I'm learning all these lessons. I don't have fellow actors and fellow people that have been in the business that can say, hey, dude, this is how this works. I'm just making mistakes unintentionally by thinking, well, we're all in bed together, right? I'm doing a favor to ABC, which will make these people happy. And it's like, no, when I would do a favor for ABC, the creator of the show and these people are pissed off because they think ABC's stealing me. And if I just do things here, well, now ABC's pissed. It's like, I'm like the child in a divorce, just being thrown around. Being traded at McDonald's on a Saturday afternoon. And it's just like, and I'm trying to quickly learn this game that I am immersed in because I'm also trying to make a living and I'm also trying to raise my children at the time. And it was a dangerous, crazy game. And people think, oh, you're hosting The Bachelor. You got it all figured out. You're crushing it. And at this point, I am making bank. I'm making the money I never dreamed I would. But it's tenuous, man.
Yeah.
They make sure it's tenuous. They whether it is or not, even when you're Tom Brady, they want you to feel like the next quarterback is waiting to come on the field.
For sure. because that gives them negotiating power.
It's leverage. It's all about leverage.
And I think that happens in almost, all corporate America at different extents. It happens in all different places, all different categories.
The entertainment business is notoriously dirty and bad about that.
Yeah.
But it does happen in every business for sure. And our business is no different.
Yeah. Interesting. Let me ask you this. I already know because I asked before the show and Chris gave me the nay. I said, first episode, I'm asking you how much you make. He's like, all right, bring it on. I said, how about the last episode? He goes, go pound salt. Okay.
Yeah. I won't tell you what I was making when I left, but I'll tell you what I made when I start. And I will tell you those two numbers were very different.
Very different. Let me ask you this. Can you tell me hot, warm, or cold in your career once you started getting going? Were you making 7 figures?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that gives it at least an idea without getting anyone in
that
trouble.
was when I renegotiated. I mean, once I renegotiated at the end of year 2, so that would have been season 6, 7. I don't know. I forget when I honestly, I keep the contract in my safe so I can just, as a keepsake for no reason at all. I can go back and look at it to see when it was. But that's when financially my life changed. Okay. That's when I realized.
Switched.
Yeah. Life's going to be pretty good.
As far as whether it's relevant to your contract or other contracts within just this industry, do contracts ever connect to performance of the show? Like in every single world, there's bonuses and stuff. Does that sometimes work?
Yeah, for sure. There's ratings bonuses. There's a lot of different ways you can skin that cat for sure. And everybody's different. It's like professional sports is the same way. Okay. If I'm, all-star, I get this. If we win the World Series, I get this. If we get, there's a ton of stuff built in. I didn't have a lot of that. Okay. We were more, again, you pick and choose what battles you're going to fight.
Yeah.
The show was, the numbers were bonkers. I can't even explain to you because it's so technical, but we were on Wednesdays at the beginning. We were on against a show called The West Wing. Mm-hmm. And there was a show called Ally McBeal that we were on against. And those were big juggernauts back in the day. And we're like, oh, y'all aren't going to survive. And we thrived and crushed those shows and put them off the air. And we were this 1,000-pound gorilla just steamrolling. And I remember when Heroes came on NBC, and a good friend of mine, Greg Grunberg, was on it. And I called him and I said, hey, buddy, congratulations on Heroes. If anybody's going to take us down, because it was getting big numbers and critical acclaim, and said, if anybody's going to take us down, I'm glad it's a friend of mine. That's awesome. I'm really happy for you. And we put that thing out of business. I mean, nobody could take us down. And we were just the bullseye of the entire industry. Everybody wanted to bury us because we were so huge.
The entire industry, the entire country, and at this point, it's touching international level. Everyone knows about it. I think Chris Harrison, though, was the bullseye for this statement, and I want to see your misconceptions with it. And it was, Chris Harrison has the most desirable job in the world. He comes out and he says, ladies, this is the final rose. I want you to give us a little behind the scenes of what that job looked like on a day-to-day basis and what the misconception is behind people saying, that's the most desirable, easiest job. I want that job. Tell us a little bit about what we don't know.
Well, I guess the best way to answer that is, the links that they went to and who they tried to replace me with. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Everyone behind the scenes at the show knows who they tried to get to replace me. The fact that none of those people would do it tells you how desirable the job is. Now,
well said.
I created the job, and at first I was just a host. I literally was a talking head and a host, and then it became more and more as I created that niche and became more of the confidant and and I had to prove my competency. I had to prove my trust and my relationship with the audience. Yeah. Once I built that, which I took very careful and I took very personal, and I knew it was important. I knew as I go, so does the audience. If the audience still loves me and embraces me and thinks of me as their friend and their brother and their confidant and this guy who's kind of the all-knowing, love guru, then I knew the show would, I would remain. Mm-hmm. And so that was my leverage. And so I cultivated that audience and that relationship that I cared for. I still do. And those are the people that propel me now and are listening to this podcast. But what the show grew into was not what I started with. Mm-hmm. And that was, the show always shot in LA. we would travel, but they would come back. Rose ceremonies were always in LA. So the show would travel, but I would stay home. I wasn't traveling. The first trip I took was just for fun with Bob Guinea. We went to Jackson Hole and I went to go fishing. I wouldn't do anything. And then the first real travel was Charlie O'Connell. Well, we shot in New York, but then we went to Aruba for 2 weeks. That was the first trade out. That was the first time.
But in the past, you would go to Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, and then you'd come back to the mansion.
Back. Like Trista went to Hawaii, and then she came back to LA.
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
So the rose ceremonies were always
you were still in
home.
LA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the finale was always back at the house.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We put up the flowers and whatever. We do it. Trista got married in the backyard of a house in Encino.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so life, I was making really good money, staying home, raising my kids, going to Mommy and Me. It was the best gig in the world. It really was the most desirable show and job in the world. But then, when we started traveling nonstop, I had to be on the road nonstop. And that was planes, trains, and automobiles 24/7. We're gone. We're shooting 3 of these a year. Then we throw in Paradise. So I'm gone for a full month to shoot Paradise. I'm away more than I'm home.
Got it. If you're doing a typical day where you're filming, let's say you're traveling and filming, how many hours are you working in a day, you think?
Depends.
Yeah.
Depends. Some days, none. Some days I'm a tourist in
Yeah.
Dubrovnik, Croatia.
Sure.
Or I'm, on a safari in South Africa, but
Yeah.
I'm also on that safari by myself.
Yeah.
Like we had young kids and they can't just pick up their lives and go with me everywhere we're going.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in school and my kids start sports and all that. So they have lives.
Yeah.
And so I would come and go and I became this, I don't regret that because I was doing it for them and they will now have a great life because of that. But man, I missed a lot of weddings, birthdays, my kids, I never missed my kid's birthday, but anniversaries and things, all that stuff goes by the wayside because
Yeah.
I'm in Phuket.
Yeah.
And you're there alone. And so that being alone, you talk about the loneliness and traveling alone. I would go days without speaking to people. I'd go days without speaking English.
Yeah.
I would travel to South Africa by myself, have to spend the night somewhere, then get in a car with someone I don't know, drive to another city. We're in this remote location and they're all shooting. And so I wouldn't see anybody.
Yeah.
And so finally I'd see the crew or I'd see a producer. I'm like, glom onto them. I'm
Yeah.
like, please come have a cup of coffee with me.
Yeah.
And so that part is the tough part. That's the part that was the grind. It wasn't the on-air stuff. On-air stuff was easy for me. It was great. I loved it. It was the behind the scenes world of that life was not, it's tough to say because it's something I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
I did not have the money growing up to travel. I didn't see the world. I probably wasn't on an airplane until I was like 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
And so to be able to see the world on someone else's dime was magnificent. And I took advantage of that.
Yeah.
I really studied the history and went to Vietnam and everywhere we went, I really dove in and loved the culture and I loved the people and, which kind of made it funny for me, the things I went through. And I'm like, there's nobody that loves more cultures more than me and loved it, and embraced it as much as I did around the world and learned so many life lessons while I was traveling and made so many friends. I adore that part of my life, but at the same time, it was the blessing and the curse.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have a million questions I could ask you about your time on The Bachelor, but I also want to get to a little bit of what you're doing today. And we only have so much time here. So one of the things I want to make sure I talk about is actually, you asked me, if you guys haven't listened to it, go listen to the episode that I go on Chris's podcast. But you asked me about my former relationship, which is, of course, no longer. We know the inevitable, spoiler alert, your relationship with the show is no longer. Do you look back at the show? Do you think about the show now? Do you love the show? Do you miss the show?
The show is a blessing. Yeah. I still look at this as a blessing in my life. It was hard at first. Obviously, it wasn't immediate where I felt great about everything. Because what I went through was tumultuous and I don't wish it on anybody. And it was horrifying on a lot of levels and something that I pray to God that my worst enemy never goes through. But with that said, I knew I had to remove myself from what became a very toxic situation. And I did. And that was a difficult situation because it probably, in the long run, I probably could have figured it out. We all could have figured it out, but I had to remove myself from that toxic situation. And so I'm proud of that decision. I'm proud that I handled it the way I did. And I still look at it as a blessing because it changed my life on so many levels. Financially, boom.
Sure.
Of course. It changed my life. It changed my kids' lives. This house we're sitting in now was built on your tears.
You're good at that. You
But
did
no,
wrong too.
in all seriousness, the friends that were in this house for my wedding that you attended, that happened because of the show.
Yeah.
And it's very rare, right? I mean, like the weird thing about my show, as opposed to being on, say, Modern Family, like Sarah Hyland, it's the same 4 people every day.
Yeah.
I met 30 new people every season,
Sure.
right? And then,
Yeah.
and then became a new bachelor, new bachelorette, new bachelor, new bachelorette. We go to Paradise. So we spent a lot of intimate time together traveling the world. And that's why these people, and we shared a very extraordinary situation and experience that bonded us all. There's things that I saw you go through that no one will ever know about.
Yeah.
We shared that. Or like we played soccer in Asia together.
Sure.
We went to do a pickup game.
Oh, yeah.
There's just things we did that were like, I'll never share with anybody else.
Right.
So I hold those things dear. It was a blessing. It changed my life. But at the same time, I can also be grateful that I'm gone.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's a relationship I don't need to be in anymore because it wasn't healthy.
It's a perfect answer. There was great things from it. There were things you learned from it, and you move on. Is it safe to say that you, as the host of any of those shows, we will not see as a career navigation standpoint? That's not in your future?
Going back to that show?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I mean, my mom always taught me never say never.
Yeah.
But no.
Okay. Fair enough. We know the career direction.
Yeah.
And it's not in that direction.
No, and it's not that I think they're still on the air. The show's still going. It's clearly changed, and I'm sure they're trying to evolve it and make it something new and interesting. It's hard in this business once you kind of start going downhill. It's hard to get that thing back up top. And that's not an indictment on anybody. It's just hard. This business is hard.
Yeah.
Once people go eat at a different restaurant, they're not coming back to yours anymore. And they have found there's other, what we were always great at is everybody came after us, right? There were a million different reality shows about love and relationships. They all failed. Mm-hmm. They all took their shot at the champ and they failed. Mm-hmm. Once I left, people started taking their shots at the champ and they've succeeded. And now there's competition. Yeah. And now those shows are in the zeitgeist. They're being talked about. They're getting the press that we used to get. So it's hard to survive when you don't have those eyeballs anymore. Okay. Because people will talk about another show.
Yeah. I think everything you said is bang on, but we think about Chris Harrison today. We think about after your time with The Bachelor. Have you been approached to be on any of those competitive shows that you think are at the pinnacle, that are at the limelight to host? Has hosting come across your desk since leaving hosting?
Yes. And going back to something you're going through now and something I went through, thankfully, I hate to say that, thankfully I got divorced, but the lessons I learned after my divorce, I applied to leaving The Bachelor because The Bachelor was a loss. It was something I went through that I had to mourn. I had to mourn the loss of something that I didn't intend to exit it then. Mm-hmm. I would have probably soon, but not then like that. And so there was mourning a loss there. And I had to realize, like when I left my marriage, take your time. And don't just jump back into the next relationship. That's not the Band-Aid that's going to heal that wound. And so I did have some immediate offers to get right back in the game. And hey, man, come on. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that is what I need. And I realized, pump your brakes, man. Take some time. I wanted to make sure my family was good. I'll be honest. I found love because of that. I had time to find love with Lauren. I really enjoyed falling in love and I really enjoyed that journey. And I gave myself time to let that breathe. I think it's probably the reason we're married is I quit hitting the road so much and I was home and I got to see my kids graduate high school, go to college, go to all my son's lacrosse games, see all my daughter's, plays and musicals that I missed for years. Mm-hmm. I was the dad. Luckily I would call the theater teacher when my daughter was in a play and I'd say, can I come to dress rehearsal? Can I come to this practice or whatever you call it and rehearsal so I can watch the show because I won't be here for the show. Yeah. I missed all her shows.
Of course.
And so, luckily I would sit in the back and just watch her practice. And so I got to do all that. And then, I won't trade that for forever because I miss so many big moments of the kids' lives as we do as parents sometimes when we're working. So, I'm glad I pumped the brakes and I didn't jump on those. So yeah, I was also offered some reality stuff like being a contestant, on, the thing that, Hannah won.
Special Forces.
Yeah, they asked me to be on Special Forces this season, the one that Nick and Tyler are on. I was asked to be on this season. There was another show. I forget the name of it. It's in Scotland. It's like a murder mystery thing. I think Ari ended up doing
Traitors.
Yeah. I was asked to be on that. There's been some other stuff like that where they've asked me to be on it. And that's not my bag. That's not, I'm a host. I'm a producer and a host. And so I think when you make that decision to step on the other side,
step on the other side
of the camera.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Step on the other side.
Yeah. You step on the other side. That's not who I am. And I don't want to be. That's just for me. And if the people that do it, great, man, good on you. I love those shows. I actually ended up watching Special Forces because Hannah was on it. And then, Tyler and Nick, I loved watching them. I love watching them compete. I will say, I think their time on The Bachelor and their time with me and learning the ropes
prepared them for that.
100%. Why do you think we win every season of Dancing with the Stars, every season of all these shows? Because going through what you go through emotionally on The Bachelor prepares you for that.
I was going to say, what's a frozen hand or finger when literally your heart's broken?
Well, all those shows, all they are is breaking you down emotionally.
Exactly.
And you're like, dude, are you kidding me? Hold my beer.
Been there, done that. Just did it an hour ago.
So I passed on, some initial hosting things, and I've talked about doing some other shows, and I finally gotten to where I was emotionally post-divorce, where when I found love with Lauren, I'm ready to get back in the game.
Yeah.
And when I found her, I'm like, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to give myself. I'm ready to give all of me. I'm ready to fall in love. I'm ready to get married, all these things. I'm like, I see it forever now. I'm like, I get this.
Yeah.
I see that once again with work. What that will manifest itself into, we'll see. But all of a sudden, my kids are at my son's a senior. He's about to graduate. Taylor's doing great. She's a sophomore heading into her junior year. So everybody's good. And I'm in a really good season of my life. Now I can feel that fire burning again.
It's been 3 years since you left the show. You've turned down a lot. I love the advice you gave to people when they need a hard reset. Don't just jump to the Band-Aid. Yeah. Take a breather. Really find your direction. But while you're finding your direction, never forget the value of your brand. Never forget who you are and what you are, even though you want to chase. You didn't do that. Fast forward.
Well, that's why, that's where the podcast came from.
Right.
The most dramatic podcast ever. It pays me a little bit, but it was never about the money. It was about reconnecting with you, reconnecting with Bachelor Nation, that relationship that I cultivated and getting back in touch with those that meant the most to me, which was you, the viewer.
Right.
And so that was the conduit to get me back, and it feels good. It felt great, and I still enjoy it. And, it reminds me of what I'm good at. It reminds me of what I love. And I'm like, okay, that stoked the flames. I'm like, here we go.
So we're now 4 years. Yeah. It feels like you've had some time to breathe, relax. January 2024 is around the corner. We know about your podcast. You've turned down a lot of opportunities. Everyone wants to know career, business, life. You're married and happy. What's next? What can we expect?
I'm a huge believer in doing all your work quietly, doing it in private. I've never been one to say, post on social media, look what's next, this, whatever. It's not that I haven't sold stuff, and, I got my book sitting right here above us, but I'm a big believer in working quietly. And then, you know what it is? It's sports. I go back to, I learned so much playing ball and playing soccer my whole life. I never told anybody how hard I worked. I never told anybody how hard I worked in the gym, or I stayed up, on Friday nights in high school. I wouldn't go to the football games. I had a soccer net in the back of my car. Me and my buddies would go set up a goal in the park, and we would play until they turned the lights off on us. That was my life. I never told anybody about that. I just did it. It felt right. It was the right thing to do. And so this will be the same thing. But I will just say this, without giving anything away, the flame has been stoked. The fire's burning hot again, and I think it's time.
So we're going to see something from Chris Harrison. That's what I'm speculating.
I can't wait to see what the next chapter brings.
Oh, that is a professional at heart. All right. If you guys haven't, make sure you download Chris's podcast, the most dramatic podcast ever. Check out a copy of his book, The Perfect Letter. Chris, before I get your trading secret, I could talk to you nonstop about all the moves you've made, where you are today, what you've gone through both personally, financially, and professionally. Unfortunately, I have to cut it off somewhere. We'll do a quick rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you a quick question. Okay. And the first thing that comes to mind, trading secret, and we're going to wrap.
Go.
Best financial decision you made.
Moving to California.
Worst financial decision you made.
A few investments that have not worked out.
Okay. For the investors back home, industry, stock, cryptos, or something you think is hot right now.
Crypto.
Do you think I should date someone from the Bachelor Nation?
No.
With certainty.
With certainty, no.
In all your years of the Bachelor world, can you think of one event that was the most dramatic?
Of just in my life?
Well, every season, it's the most dramatic.
Yeah, right.
Season.
Okay, ask me that again.
Okay. In the Bachelor world, can you think of one moment or one thing that happened that actually was the most dramatic thing that ever happened?
Yeah. My wedding.
Oh.
Because if you think about it, the show led to my wedding. I met Lauren because she was covering the show. The show brought me together. And so that was one thing that struck me later was my wedding, the love of my life, everything I have right now, it actually happened because of the show. And for that, I will always be grateful.
And I had more rapid fire questions, but when you get goosebumps shoulder to feet, that's where you end. Chris, I need one trading secret from you. This has been an unbelievable, insightful, educational, certainly motivational, even a little bit therapeutic episode. One trading secret that we could only get from Chris Harrison. Can't get from a professor, a YouTube tutorial, a TikTok, only from your life and work experience.
Don't be afraid to fail. Live below your means, always. And don't worry about the money and the title when you're starting out. It'll come. Trust me, it'll come.
I love those three. I'm going to give my own trading secret too. I learned from you. Put your damn ego away.
Yep.
Lead with your heart and your logic, and the rest will come. Chris Harrison, where can everyone find everything you have going on?
Most dramatic podcast ever, found wherever podcasts are aired, wherever you people listen to those things. The Perfect Letter. It's funny how many people are coming back and finding the book. I wrote it back in 2015.
Yep.
It's actually a great little romance novel. Maybe we should turn that into a TV show.
That could be a TV show. Who knows? I'll tell you what. We'll all be following along to Chris Harrison. Make sure you go follow him too on Instagram because I don't know. It feels like something's coming, something's brewing. So I'm excited to see.
Me too.
I'm happy for you.
Me too.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for being on Trading Secrets.
Love you, brother.